Hello everyone, welcome back to our introduction to Mudbox 2017. We're going to get back into our other paint tools here. And let's go ahead and start by creating ourselves another layer here. So we have our base layers that we worked on last time. I got rid of some of the stuff I stamped on top of it, just made a clean base color, just with the flood. So I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. We'll go ahead and call this one um, surface texture. And size is fine, Targa is good, diffuse, yes. Okay, there we go. So now we have this texture on top. This is going to work just like Photoshop, where what's on top here will be painted on top of this other layer, and we can swap these around if we want to and turn off visibility and strength. So let's go ahead and jump into the airbrush. The airbrush is a lot like the paintbrush, and really the only difference is in the way the tool works is just how it's applied. So the paintbrush is more of a full color, whereas airbrush is kind of like sprayed on, as the description of the name says. So let's go ahead and add in, let's say, let's do a pink color, sure. Okay. Sorry, I have two screens, so this is on the other one. Okay. And as I'm painting, it's going on there, but it's also got the stamp on there, which you may or may not want, but you can see how like the color, how it's it has this random pattern. It's thick in the middle, where like a spray can would be, and then it gets soft on the edges, and you can see the pattern up here from the stamp. I go ahead and get rid of that. If I want to get rid of the stamp, go ahead and just paint directly on there, and then it gives you that rattle can kind of look. Let's go ahead and segue a little bit into the stamps. We have underneath this tab right here, you can see it says stamp. And any of these stamps we want to pick will load up automatically inside this stamp tray right here. So let's say, like, right now it's this texture here, which is this one down here, and you get this look, right? Let's go ahead and change the color so we can see a difference here. Let's do something like that. Okay. I could pick a different one and say, okay, let's actually do, let's say this one. Okay, you see it just loads automatically up in there. And now I get this kind of a look going on, which is pretty interesting. It's a veiny kind of look. You can tap it in there, or you can just drag it in there. I can kind of notice, like, when you tap and don't do so much dragging, that you end up with a little bit more of a organic look. That's what you're after. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much the spray can, or I'm sorry, not spray can, the airbrush in a nutshell. All the stuff inside here is the same. We can mirror it, do the same thing here. We can mirror on both sides and draw at the same time on both sides. Same thing as the paintbrush. Okay. We have steady stroke. Those are all the same. Advanced setups and fall offs are exactly the same. You can adjust it just like that. If you want to adjust your fall off without doing, let's say, you can go over here and manually do it and make it however you want. But if you want something a little quicker, you can go to the next tab from stamp, or two tabs over, where it says fall off. There's some quick setups here for fall offs, so you can adjust those as well really quickly right there. We don't really need to get into that in this lesson though. Okay. I want to go back. I did skip over a couple of these, like the eyedropper seems pretty obvious. The only thing that's a little bit different about this is that this one will let you pick from the selected layer. But I'm not going to really waste time on eyedropper. It's the same thing that's on, you click on the color channel, there's the eyedropper here. If you're familiar with Photoshop, it's the same deal. There's not a whole lot different there. I do want to spend a minute with projection. This is something that is a real powerful tool, and I think that everyone who uses Mudbox really loves this one. So first thing you have to do with a projection is you pick the stencil you want to use. So let's go over here, and we're going to say let's go ahead and use Sure, let's go with, or no, let's go with this one right here. Okay. Now on the left hand here, it gives you like all the little hotkeys in case you forget them. It's good to know this. Sometimes you don't want to see your stencil you're working with as you're painting, so to hide it is Q. To scale it is S and right mouse button, just like it says on the right there or left there, so you can scale this to make this texture a little bit more dense. Okay, and because all you need to do is you need to paint over this. Now the thing is, if you make it smaller, if you go over the edges, it's going to be cut off. It's not going to be like this seamless pattern that'll just populate around. So you have to be careful when you make the texture smaller. So if you want to make sure that you don't have an accident, either A, zoom in, or make your texture bigger. So then all you have to do is just left mouse button drag over the top, and that texture just gets painted right on there. Now one thing I do want to point out with these projection textures, you gotta be careful. They don't follow the normal of your object. So what I mean by that is that if I was to as I paint around the outside here, getting closer to here, there will be a little bit of stretching you'll see that will start to happen right here. That's just because based off the camera view, it's not based off the normal surface direction. So as this goes around, it isn't wrapping around your object. So you have to be a little careful when you're painting with projections, keeping that in mind, that it's to get it to where it looks right, you have to kind of follow it around and do a little blending in spots. So very cool. You can rotate this, S, left mouse button lets you rotate, and then left or S and middle mouse button lets you drag it around. So much like you do in the scene. Okay. All right. So that is projection in a nutshell. If you scroll down, there's not as many properties as far as what you get in the other ones. You have your texture image. You can have some of these pop in, whether it's use tiles, hide when sculpted, show tiles. Has some other options here as far as transforms goes, but these are all kind of set up as you're going through and doing your rotate, scale, and your hotkeys. These things all get switched up as you're moving it anyway, so not a real big point in doing alteration here that I've found anyways. You can also, let's say you found a picture that you want to bring in and you want to use that inside of Mudbox, you can click on this little tab here and it'll say add stencil. So anything you find on the internet or you make inside of Photoshop, you can bring it in here and then just paint it right on top of your object, which works awesome. If you want to bring in a skin texture, just paint it on there. Create it on a layer here. I mean, the initial texture here you can always drop down so it isn't so strong. Have it blend into the surface a little bit more and then paint over it again with something else. So we'll get into that a little bit later and a little bit more in depth with our future projects. Okay, so we've covered the projection and we've covered the airbrush. Pencil is pretty much what you would think it is, just a heart line pencil. You just draw straight on there. You can have some like the same features you'll see in the other ones as far as color, use stamp. Typically when you're using pencil, you don't really need any of that. You will adjust the size sometimes you don't want it to be quite as thin, sometimes you want it to be thicker, but then you end up with something similar to an airbrush. If you want to be something a little bit more so that's pencil in a nutshell. I don't really use that very often, but maybe you can find a use for it. Eraser is exactly what you think it would do. It erases on the specific layer you're currently on. So for instance, if I am wanting to erase on the base layer but not the upper layer, as I'm erasing, you can see that's showing the surface texture underneath it. Control Z is the undo, just like it is in Maya. So or in pretty much any package. So if I want to specify I want to actually do this one, I'll just paint this away and I'll leave the base texture alone. So, erase in a nutshell. Dry brush and blur. Well, dry brush, we need actual surface texture to work with. It's based off of height values. So once we have some texture like skin wrinkles or muscles or crevices, it'll paint either the top and leave the inside untouched, or if you hold down control, do the reverse and paint inside the crevices but leave the top untouched. So those are some things we'll have to experiment with later on in future projects. So let's just explain them in a nutshell without being a demo them. With the clone brush, it's just like Photoshop. You pick a target. So we can say, okay, I want to go with something right here. Say that's the target. As I'm painting over here, you can see that that target is samples coming from over there. It's not mimicking the stamp though. Oh, there it is. Okay, so now it is. So I don't really find a whole lot of use for clone brush in here, but if you're a Photoshop guru, this is probably like just feels like home for you. So clone brush for you. Blur and dodge and burn contrast. These are all for once we have a fully textured object to demonstrate, so you can deal with light burning and dodging. But we just don't have enough to work with on this demo, so we'll have to deal with these a little bit later on once we get into our future projects. So that should pretty much do it in a nutshell for this introduction video for the paint side of things. In the next video, I'm going to get into the sculpt textures and kind of explain how some of these tools work. And then we'll get into our first project. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next project. Next video. Sorry.